In a future where humans are forced to live with alien roommates to promote peace, Jace Mallory finds himself trapped in a cold, emotionless experiment. But when he stumbles upon a hidden cube, everything changes. It's not just a tracker, it's a device that could expose the truth about the Galactic Union's twisted plans. As tensions rise between Jace and his alien roommates, one thing is clear: the Union is watching their every move. With danger closing in, Jace must decide: destroy the cube and risk their lives, or use it to ignite a revolution that could shatter the galaxy's delicate peace. The countdown has begun, and nothing will ever be the same. Will they survive the test, or will the Union crush their rebellion before it even starts? If you're new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Jace Mallory stood at the foot of a towering black building, the cold wind cutting through his jacket. The sun had already disappeared, and the sky above was a strange shade of purple painted with artificial stars. He had just stepped off the transport shuttle, his heart racing with unease. The building in front of him looked nothing like a home. Instead, it resembled a prison, cold and sterile, with no signs of warmth or comfort. Jace's throat tightened as he stared at the entrance. This would be his new reality. Jace was one of the chosen, though most called it the unlucky few. After the devastating war between humans and alien species, the Galactic Union had created a new rule, one that would supposedly bring peace between the species: the co-living decree. The idea was simple: humans and aliens would live together, forced to share space and hopefully learn to coexist. The Union believed that living side by side would unite them, that emotional bonds would form through shared experiences. It sounded too good to be true. Peace was one thing, but this felt like something else entirely. Jace had never asked for this. He had never volunteered. After the war, he just wanted to rebuild, to find some normalcy. But that was no longer an option. His assignment was random, like everyone else's. And now, as the door to Unit 47 slid open with a soft hiss, Jace was about to find out what life under this new decree would be like. The room inside was clean, quiet, and everything seemed to glow unnaturally. The furniture looked foreign, with metal surfaces and strange shapes. Some parts of the room emitted soft light, as if the walls themselves were alive. Jace didn't know what to make of it. His heart thudded in his chest as he stepped inside, feeling like a stranger in his own life. He didn't know who he was going to live with, what kind of creatures these aliens were, or how he was supposed to bond with them. As he adjusted to the new environment, a robotic voice suddenly filled the room. Unit 47, Co-Living Program, active. Emotional stability required. Bonding encouraged. Jace frowned. Emotional stability. Bonding. This was nothing like he had imagined. His mind raced as he tried to wrap his head around the reality of it all. He hadn't asked for this, but here he was. Before he could think more about it, the door opened again and a tall figure entered. Jace turned, eyes wide, and his heart skipped a beat. The alien in front of him was unlike anything he had ever seen. Her skin was glowing, a shimmering amber color, and her eyes were cold and sharp like two burning orbs. Her armor clung tightly to her body, a reflection of strength and discipline. She stood tall, at least a foot taller than Jace, and she didn't look like someone who wanted to make friends. "Are you the human?" she asked, her voice low and commanding. Jace swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, I'm Jace." "You're late," the alien responded, her tone indifferent. Before Jace could respond, another figure appeared from the shadows. This one was completely different. Smaller, softer, and with a calm energy that seemed to settle the room. Her skin was a pale blue, her hair long and silver, flowing like it was underwater. She was dressed in a silky robe, and when she moved, it was almost as if she floated. "Don't speak to him like that, Zarilla," the new alien said, her voice gentle but firm. "He's clearly confused." Jace turned, unsure what to think. The new alien, who looked so much kinder than the first one, offered a small smile. "I'm Lyra. We'll be living together." Jace blinked, still trying to process the situation. Two completely different aliens, one cold and harsh, the other calm and gentle, living together with him. He was beginning to feel the weight of the decree bearing down on him. This wasn't going to be easy. Zarela, the taller alien, crossed her arms and looked Jace up and down. "Don't think we're here because we want to be," she said, her voice flat. "I lost a war. Now I'm forced to live with you." Jace opened his mouth to respond, but Lyra interrupted, her voice calm. "Speak for yourself," she said. "I volunteered." Jace didn't know what to say. He didn't want to be here either, but what choice did he have? The doors closed behind him with a soft thud, and a red light blinked on the ceiling. "Surveillance. Active," the robotic voice declared. "Monitoring for Harmony begins now." Jace's stomach dropped. Harmony? He hadn't even figured out how to survive the first few moments, and already they were being watched. The idea that someone was monitoring his every move made his skin crawl. It wasn't just about sharing space. It was about being controlled, tested, and judged. Jace wasn't sure what he had gotten himself into, but there was no turning back now. As Jace looked around, he realized there was no way out. The room was silent again, with only the soft hum of the lights in the background. It felt like a cage, but one he couldn't escape from. Alara, the alien woman with glowing amber skin, gave him a sharp look. "We're here to survive, human, not to make friends." Lyra, on the other hand, simply nodded. "We'll get through this, but we need to try." Jace stood still, unsure of what to do next. There was no escaping this. He was now a part of the co-living decree, bound to live with two very different aliens, and the rules were clear. Bonding was encouraged, and emotional stability was mandatory. Jace took a deep breath and tried to calm his racing thoughts. Maybe they could find a way to coexist. Maybe it wasn't as impossible as it seemed. But one thing was certain. This wasn't just about surviving the next few months. This was about change, and whether he liked it or not, he was going to be a part of it. The red light blinked again. The morning in Unit 47 arrived with a strange, almost eerie stillness. No alarm, no announcement, just the faint hum of the walls. Jace Mallory slowly opened his eyes, his body stiff from the uncomfortable couch he had spent the night on. The soft, artificial glow of the room filled his vision as he sat up, trying to make sense of the situation. It was his first day in this strange new world, and the discomfort was overwhelming. The couch wasn't made for sleeping, and his back ached from the awkward position. The walls felt cold, and the silence pressed in on him like a heavy weight. He glanced around the room, still unfamiliar with every detail. The glowing furniture, the strange metallic plants, and the soft pulse of light made it clear that this was no ordinary living space. It was a place built for aliens, not humans. The room's walls were smooth and silver, with panels that seemed to hum quietly. Jace had never felt so out of place. His life back on Earth seemed like a distant memory, as if he had been thrown into another universe entirely. He could barely remember a time when things had been normal, before the war, before the co-living decree, and before his life was reduced to this strange experiment. Jace sighed and rubbed his face, trying to gather his thoughts. He had to make the best of this, or at least survive. That was what they wanted, right? They wanted humans and aliens to learn to coexist, to live together peacefully. But how could he coexist with two complete strangers, especially when one was as cold as Zarela and the other as quiet as Lyra? The soft sound of footsteps caught his attention, and Jace turned to see Lyra floating into the room. Her pale violet skin shimmered in the dim light, and her long silver hair glided through the air like it was weightless. Her soft robe barely made a sound as she moved. Unlike Zarela, who always had an air of command, Lyra exuded a quiet, almost calming presence. But even she was distant in her own way. "Morning, Jace," Lyra said softly, her eyes flickering to him before she looked down at her feet. "I trust you slept, all right?" Her voice was warm but reserved, like she was offering an olive branch that Jace wasn't sure he could accept. "Morning," Jace replied, trying to sound more at ease than he felt. "Not the best sleep, I don't think these couches are meant for humans. Lyra smiled slightly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. No, they're not, but we adapt. We all have to. This is our reality now. Jace nodded, unsure of how to respond. He didn't want to dwell on the uncomfortable situation for too long. The silence that followed was thick, neither of them knowing what to say next. Jace's mind raced. He was supposed to bond with these aliens? The idea felt absurd. How could he connect with two beings who didn't even seem to like each other, let alone share a space with them? Before he could think any further, the door to the unit slid open with a hiss. Jace turned to see Zarilla entering, her tall, imposing figure casting a shadow across the room. Her black armor clung tightly to her body, and her sharp amber eyes scanned the room as if searching for something to destroy. Her gaze landed on Jace, and the tension in the room instantly grew. Zarilla said nothing, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She was still the same, cold, aloof, and unwelcoming. Jace felt a shiver run down his spine. Her presence was like a storm waiting to break. She wasn't here to make friends. That much was clear. Lyra, sensing the shift, spoke up again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's try to make the best of this," she said to Jace, glancing at Zarilla. "We don't have to like each other, but we do need to survive together." Jace nodded, though he wasn't sure how much longer he could keep up this act of peace. Every time he looked at Zarilla, he felt an overwhelming sense of tension. But he couldn't afford to fight. The cameras, the surveillance, the ever-watchful eyes of the Galactic Union. Everything was being monitored. One wrong move and they could all be wiped out. "What's for breakfast?" Jace asked, trying to break the uncomfortable silence that had settled between them. Lyra looked at him with a slight tilt of her head. "I was going to make something, but I don't know if you'll like it. It's alien food after all." Jace smiled weakly, trying to lighten the mood. "At this point, I'll try anything. I'm not picky." Zarilla, who had been standing still and silent, spoke up suddenly, her voice flat and unamused. "You're lucky you even get food here. The Union doesn't care about your preferences. We're all here for one reason: survival." Jace glanced at her, unsure whether she was taunting him or simply stating facts. He chose not to respond. Arguing with her would get him nowhere. Instead, he sat at the table, trying to focus on Lyra, who seemed to be making an effort to at least engage with him. Lyra quickly moved to the food unit, which hummed softly as it prepared the meal. She pulled out a strange, glowing container, which emitted a soft, ethereal light. As she set it down, the scent that wafted through the air was unfamiliar, sweet and floral, with an undercurrent of something metallic. Jace hesitated, but decided to give it a try. After a few moments, Lyra set 2 small bowls in front of them. Zarilla took hers without a word, while Jace picked up the strange utensil and took a bite. The taste was unlike anything he had ever experienced, sweet yet sour, with a texture that was both soft and chewy. It wasn't unpleasant, but it wasn't something he would ever choose to eat on Earth. Zarilla eyed him from across the table, her eyes sharp. "You'll get used to it," she said, her tone colder than the food. Jace couldn't help but feel like an intruder in this strange world. He wasn't just a guest here, he was a test subject. The thought of it made his stomach turn. The entire purpose of this co-living decree seemed more like an experiment than an effort for peace. As the meal continued, the silence between them was broken only by the sound of their utensils. The tension in the room never lifted, but Jace tried to remain calm. He knew that if he let his frustration show, things could get much worse. Eventually, Jace stood up and stretched, looking for something to occupy his mind. "I guess we'll be spending a lot of time together. We should figure out a schedule or something." Zarilla shot him a glare that could have frozen the room. "Don't tell me what to do," she snapped. Lyra, who had been quieter than usual, gently intervened. "Let's just take things one step at a time, all right? We're here for a reason, whether we like it or not." Jace nodded, though doubt still gnawed at him. He didn't want to be here, and neither did Zarilla. But Lyra seemed willing to try. And for the first time since arriving, Jace wondered if there was a way for them to find peace, if not for the Union, then for themselves. The day stretched, on with more silence, more awkward moments, and more attempts at connecting, but each step forward was met with resistance, and Jace couldn't shake the feeling that he was caught in the middle of something bigger than all of them. The red light on the ceiling blinked above them, reminding him of the ever-watchful eyes of the Galactic Union. This was just the beginning. Jace sat on the edge of the strange metallic couch, his eyes scanning the room as if trying to make sense of his new reality. The co-living decree had made everything feel foreign, and with each passing minute he grew more uneasy. Alara, the stern and distant alien woman, stood across from him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, while Lyra, the quieter of the two, seemed to be lost in her own thoughts. The silence between them was almost suffocating, the tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. As Jace looked around the room, something strange caught his attention. There, in the corner of the unit, hidden behind a series of glowing alien plants, was a small metallic object. It was tucked away, as though someone had deliberately tried to hide it. Jace's curiosity got the best of him. He stood up and made his way over to the corner, his footsteps muffled by the soft floor. His fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the object, and as he pulled it out, his heart skipped a beat. It was a small cube, glowing faintly with an eerie, pulsing light. Jace turned the cube over in his hands, examining it closely. It didn't look like anything from Earth. The surface was smooth, almost organic in nature, with intricate patterns etched into its sides. He felt a strange pull to it, as though the cube was alive, whispering to him. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him told him this was important, that it wasn't just an ordinary object. But before he could inspect it further, he heard a voice behind him. "What is that?" Alara's cold tone sent a shiver down Jace's spine. He turned to see her watching him closely, her amber eyes narrowed in suspicion. Jace hesitated, the cube still in his hands. "I found it," he said, trying to sound casual. "It was hidden behind those plants." Lyra, who had been sitting silently by the wall, stood up and moved towards him, her soft violet skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She eyed the cube with a quiet intensity. "It doesn't belong here," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Put it down, Jace." Alara's gaze flicked between Jace and Lyra, her expression unreadable. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "What's so important about this cube?" Jace felt a pang of anxiety. He didn't know what to say. He didn't even understand why the cube felt so significant. But he knew that something wasn't right. He could feel it in the air, the tension that seemed to hang around them like an invisible weight. "Maybe we should leave it alone," Lyra said, her voice calm. But Jace could see the worry in her eyes. "We don't know what it is, and we don't need to attract attention." But Jace couldn't shake the feeling that this cube held the answers to something much bigger than he could comprehend. He stared at it as if it were calling to him. "Why is it hidden?" Jace asked aloud, more to himself than anyone else. "And why does it feel important?" Alara stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "Put it down," she said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. Jace hesitated for a moment, but then he felt the cube pulse gently in his hands. It was as if it had a life of its own, urging him to do something. Without thinking, he pressed his thumb against the center of the cube. Suddenly, a soft beep echoed through the room and the cube's surface began to glow brighter. "What did you do?" Alara demanded, her eyes wide with alarm. Before Jace could answer, the walls of the room seemed to come alive. The lights flickered, and a strange mechanical sound filled the air. The room suddenly felt colder, the temperature dropping rapidly. Jace looked around in panic, unsure of what was happening. Then a robotic voice filled the room, cold and emotionless. "Surveillance system activated. Unauthorized access detected, initiating protocol." Jace's heart raced. "What does that mean?" he asked, his voice trembling. He looked at Alara and Lyra for answers, but they were both just as confused as he was. "The Union," Alara muttered, her eyes darting to the glowing red light above them. They've been watching us, this cube. It's not just a recorder, it's a tool for monitoring us. Jace's blood ran cold. What do you mean, monitoring us? Lyra stepped forward, her expression grave. The cube is more than just a device. It's a tracker, a recorder. It captures everything, our movements, our conversations, our emotions. It's part of the system, part of the experiment. Jace's mind raced as he tried to process the information. He had thought the co-living decree was just about bringing peace, but now he understood. This was more than a simple peacekeeping mission. The Union wasn't just interested in creating unity. They were watching them, studying them, testing them. What do we do now? Jace asked, his voice shaking. Lyra's eyes softened, but there was a glint of determination in them. We have to destroy it. If the Union knows we found it, they'll shut us down, they'll erase us. Jace nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation, but Alara stepped forward, her face hardening. No, she said sharply. We can't destroy it. We need to learn from it. We need to understand what they're doing to us. Jace looked at her, his mind whirling. You want to keep it after everything we've learned? Alara's gaze was unwavering. It's the only way we can fight back. We have to find out what the Union is doing to us, and we need to know how to stop them. Jace felt a lump form in his throat. This was bigger than just surviving. This was about something deeper. The more he thought about it, the more he realized the truth. The Union wasn't just trying to bring peace. They were trying to control them, to test their limits, to see if they could break under pressure. What do you want us to do? Jace asked, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. Alara nodded, a hint of respect in her eyes. We keep the cube, we learn from it, and when the time comes, we use it against them. Jace's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about fighting back, and the first step had just begun. The silence that followed Jace's discovery of the cube was unlike anything he had ever felt before. The air in Unit 47 grew thicker, heavier, as if the walls themselves were closing in on him. Alara, standing firm as always, seemed unfazed by the revelation, her sharp amber eyes still fixed on the cube as if it held the answers to a puzzle she had been trying to solve for years. Lyra, however, was different. Her eyes flickered with worry, but her calm demeanor didn't waver. The tension in the room was palpable, but there was something else, something beneath the surface. A quiet but undeniable shift was happening. Jace glanced from one alien to the other, unsure of what to do next. The cube, which had started as a simple object of curiosity, now felt like a ticking bomb. He knew the stakes had just risen. The Galactic Union was no longer just watching. They were actively controlling their every move. And the more Jace thought about it, the more he realized that he couldn't just sit back and wait for things to unfold. They were being used as experiments, and it was time for that to stop. We need to get rid of it, Jace said quietly, his voice steady but filled with resolve. If the Union finds out we have this, they'll come for us. We can't let them win. Alara's eyes narrowed. No, we can't destroy it. Not yet, she said firmly. We don't even know what it does completely. What if it's our only chance to fight back? Jace stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Was she suggesting that they use the cube, even after everything it represented? His mind raced as he thought about their situation. The Union had made sure. They were being watched at every moment. They had imposed this co-living decree to control them, to keep them from rising up. But here they were, with a device that could potentially reveal everything. Lyra spoke softly, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much. She's right, Jace. If we break it, we'll never know the full truth. But if we keep it, we might have a chance to learn how to fight back. We're already being watched, but maybe, just maybe, we can turn this around. Jace sighed, his hands gripping the edge of the table. It was a risk. No, it was more than a risk. It was the kind of gamble that could cost them everything. But what choice did they have? The Union had already taken everything from him. His Home, his family, his freedom. This was their only shot. We keep it, Jace said, his voice firm now. But we do it on our terms. We learn from it, and when the time comes, we strike. The words hung in the air like a promise that would either break them or set them free. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. The red light above them never stopped blinking, and the surveillance system seemed to be growing more intrusive. Jace couldn't shake the feeling that they were being monitored every second, their every move watched. But there was a new energy in the room, a sense of purpose. Lyra spent hours examining the cube, trying to understand its functions while Alara worked tirelessly to uncover any weaknesses in the system. Jace, for his part, kept his head down and stayed out of their way. He had no idea what they were planning, but he trusted them. For the first time since he had arrived in Unit 47, he wasn't alone. Then one night, everything changed. Jace had been lying awake on the hard floor, his thoughts racing when he heard it, a faint sound, like a low hum coming from the corner of the room. He sat up quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. Lyra was standing by the wall, her hands moving over the cube with a quiet urgency. Her eyes were focused, her brow furrowed, in concentration. "Lyra?" Jace whispered, not wanting to startle her. She turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the soft glow of the cube. "It's activating," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think it's sending a signal." Jace's stomach dropped. The cube? Was it sending a message? Who was it communicating with? The thought of it being used against them made his skin crawl. But Lyra wasn't afraid. She stepped forward, her fingers tracing the surface of the cube. "It's not a signal to the Union," she said, her voice steady. "It's something else, something bigger." Jace watched her, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Before Lyra could respond, a robotic voice echoed through the room. It was cold, emotionless, but it carried a sense of finality. "Surveillance system offline. Protocol override initiated. Unauthorized access detected." Jace's eyes widened. "What the hell does that mean?" Lyra looked at him, her expression calm but serious. "It means we've just taken control of the system." Alara, who had been standing silently in the doorway, stepped forward. "You've done it," she said, her voice filled with a rare sense of approval. "We're not just pawns anymore. We've turned the tables." Jace felt a surge of hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, they had the upper hand. The system was no longer in control. They were. The next few days were filled with planning and careful strategy. They knew the Union would eventually realize what had happened. But for now, they had a window of opportunity, a small, fragile window that they needed to use to their advantage. Jace, Lyra, and Alara worked together, using their combined knowledge to sabotage the surveillance systems, hacking into the Union's communications, and leaving false signals to throw them off track. But they knew it wouldn't last. The Union would be coming for them soon. They had to act quickly. As they prepared for the next phase of their plan, the cube pulsed again, this time with a bright, steady glow. It was as if it was alive, as if it had awakened from its slumber and was now fully aware of what was happening. The message had been sent, and there was no turning back. Jace stood at the edge of the unit, looking out at the dark expanse beyond. The city was quiet, but he could feel the tension building. It was only a matter of time before the Union realized what they had done. But Jace wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He wasn't just surviving now, he was fighting back. And he knew that, together with Lyra and Alara, they had started something much bigger than any of them could have imagined. A revolution had begun. The Galactic Union had underestimated the power of connection, of trust, of emotion. And now, they were going to see what happens when enemies decide to fight for something bigger than themselves. The revolution was no longer a dream. It was a reality, and Jace Mallory was at the heart of it.